Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I built a diabolical triple form changing team for the Open Grade League. Now, I had first tried triple form changers when Mimikyu was released 2 months ago, and the team did okay, but honestly it was held back by the fact that Aegislash is pretty bad in a Mimikyu meta. Well, another form changer has arrived in Cramorant, which means we can run 3 form changers without having to use Aegislash. And against all odds, this team actually went quite positive in the 3200s, although to be clear, do not run this team if you care about your elo. I just kind of threw this team together for a laugh, and it ended up exceeding expectations. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we pick up at least a pretty okay lead in the first match, leading Morpeko into Tinkaton. Now, having played this matchup as the Tinkaton several times, I know that if you don't end up getting Bulldoze debuffs, then you should always be able to make it to a second Aura Wheel. If your opponent goes for the Gigaton, you're just going to get KO'd, but I'm going to call it and hope they don't. My opponent fires off a charge attack, I no shield, and thankfully it is just the Bulldoze. And the fact that they had overfarmed before throwing the Bulldoze means that even despite the debuff, I'm barely able to hang on and make it to the +1 Dark Aura Wheel. Now with a shield advantage, I can send in Cramorant, and my opponent's going to pivot out and send in Mantine. Instead of going for the neutral fly, I'm going to be going for the resisted Surf here. Surf doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does form change Cramorant into the Gulping form. Now as they fire off Twister, I'm going to get to inflict 15% of their HP in recoil damage and debuff their defense as well. And due to that defense drop, I think that this Surf will actually now KO, and that Surf is going to form change me once again, but this time I'm in Gorging form. Now my opponent's going to send in Thievil. Thievil going to try for the farm down, but the high rank Cramorant pays off. We're barely able to hang on and make it to the Fly. Fly will get the final Protect shield. Thievil farms down, and now it's a 2 shield Mimikyu versus the world. Well, I could say 3 shield Mimikyu, because Mimikyu obviously has this built-in disguise. My opponent fires off the Icy Wind. I didn't want to lower my defense, so I ended up putting up the shield. However, now that I've taken a bunch of Sucker Punches, I'm very okay with having the disguise break, and now my defense be at -1. I'm going to overfarm, watching for the catch, but my opponent is just too good. They catch the Play Rough onto the Tinkaton, but I am still going to full charge it, because I should be able to get a pretty nasty farm down with Mimikyu. And as long as Mimikyu is able to make a Play Rough into the Thievil, this game is over. My opponent is going to get fully farmed down, back in comes the Thievil, we're able to outpace and make it to the Play Rough, and even though our attack has been debuffed by Icy Wind, Thievil still gets knocked out by the Play Rough, and that is a good game. We move to game number 2, leading Morpeko into Florges, and unfortunately the Fairy leads are out today. I'm just going to go straight for the Aura Wheel. I don't have an amazing switch into a Florges save switch, as Florges could always just debuff me and then pivot out, so instead, I think I'm just going to sacrifice the Morpeko. Morpeko can actually put a lot of shield pressure onto Florges. My opponent goes for a Trailblaze, and unfortunately, that is going to get the perfect farm down, denying me the Psychic Fangs. Now I can bring in Cramorant. Cramorant, I'm not going to be shielding because Florges is often paired with electric types in the back, and if they have an electric type, then unfortunately Cramorant isn't going to be doing anything. I wasn't quite sure if a Surf would take the knockout, so we go for the harder hitting Fly just to guarantee the KO. So down goes Florges, my opponent sends out a Fearow, and this is not what I was expecting. I was expecting to see a Charge Bug or a Hisuian Electro. This is actually quite playable. I fire off the Fly, they no shield, it's a simultaneous switch, Mimikyu into Shadow Canto Ninetales. And I should actually be in a very good spot to close out this game. I still do have a little bit of HP remaining on the Cramorant, and I think I'm actually going to need it. Now, I'm just going to overfarm quite a bit, because I wasn't quite confident the Shadow Sneak would take the knockout there. In my eyes, the safe play here is to tank the first to break the disguise, shield the second, and then just double up on Shadow Sneaks. This way, if my opponent ends up putting up the shield, then I can just fire off the second Shadow Sneak, win charge attack priority, and Canto Ninetales is going to get knocked out. My opponent still does have a ton of energy stored on that Fearow. Fearow will hit the field, my Shadow Claws are double resisted, and Fearow is 1 off the back-to-back. Even though I could consider going for the catch here, I think just staying in and forcing them to throw energy will probably be best, because I have a very good Cramorant, and I think I might survive a peck. This is going to be close. Cramorant versus the Fearow. Cramorant survives on very low HP, and we're able to escape with the win. We move to game number 3, Morpeko into Guzlord. That is a terrible lead. I throw a Thundershock, transfer the Dragon Tail onto the Cramorant, and my opponent pivots out before chipping and brings in Tinkaton. This should actually be a pretty flippable matchup for Cramorant. Cramorant should be able to shield up the Gigaton Hammer, land a Surf, and then fully farm down. So I'm going to put up the shield just to get baited with the Bulldoze. Oh, that is basically the worst case scenario. Even though I've switched and I'm now in the Gulping form, shielding a Bulldoze is absolutely catastrophic, as that means my opponent is going to make the Gigaton Hammer, and that would do an insane amount of damage here. So I decide that I'm double shielding Cramorant, which is probably a pretty bad idea considering I'm very, very weak to Guzlord with this team, but I still feel like I need Cramorant alive if I want any chance of winning. So I'm able to land the fly, which is very good damage. My opponent can go for the brutal swing, and if this doesn't KO, I'm going to throw one peck, and then I'm going to end up transferring that Dragon Tail damage onto Mimikyu. My opponent's going to stay in, fire off the brutal swing. Mimikyu's disguise will be busted. I'm down 2 shields. I'm down Mimikyu's disguise as well, and their final Pokemon is revealed to be Seismitoad. Seismitoad does lose charge attack priority to Mimikyu, so I will fire off the Shadow Sneak on the CMP tie. Shadow Sneak lands, my opponent not electing to put up the Protect Shield. They're recognizing that other charge attacks could potentially do more, but by no shielding that, are they even going to have a chance to throw a charge attack for the remainder of the game? I can just bring in the Cramorant. They're forced to throw energy. This is a misplay by me. I should have thrown the Surf before they made the move. I thought Cramorant won charge attack priority, because if I threw the Surf, then my opponent, as they fired off energy, would have been knocked out by the recoil. But either way, the Guzlord is just simply too low, so my opponent is going to end up fainting with both Protect Shields intact. Definitely not the best played game by me, but we were able to claw our way back and still get the win. Great lead in the next match, Morpeko into Thievil. Thievil does actually win the ones here because Thievil is just an absolute menace to society, but Morpeko should still have a pretty good matchup overall. Since I know that I win the zeros and I don't win the ones, I'm just not going to shield. I should always be able to make it to a second Aura Wheel, and even though it's going to be a dark Aura Wheel, that's still some pretty nice damage onto the Thievil. If I can get Thievil low, I'm hoping that Mimikyu plus Cramorant in the back is going to do quite well. So I'm just going to let myself get fully farmed down here. The Thievil exits with a ton of energy, but I should be able to get a pretty nasty resisted Shadow Claw down. So in comes Mimikyu, Shadow Claw sneaks through as they fire off energy, and I'm going to no shield, breaking the disguise, but keeping my 2 Protect Shields intact. Now I can get the farm down, but no, Thievil hangs on, 1 HP remaining. That was not in my plans whatsoever. I no shield the Night Slash and pay a very heavy price. Now it's basically Cramorant versus the world as in comes Clodsire. I fire off the Shadow Sneak just to get a little bit of chip damage, and then it's all up to Cramorant. Cramorant will hit the field, my opponent is going to fire off energy, and I'm always going to be putting up the shield. This Clodsire is on Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb honestly doesn't do a ton of damage, and here I end up making a very critical error. I don't CMP tie. I throw the Surf 1 before the CMP tie, and they live on 1 HP. That is a massive error on my part. Had I CMP tied, they would have just been KO'd, and they never would have got the move. But as it turns out, that error is not going to cost me the game, as Cramorant is just too strong into their backline. Their final Pokemon is revealed to be Shadow Kanto Ninetales. Ninetales can make an Energy Ball, but it's just never knocking out the Cramorant. My opponent tries to get to 2. They know they need the back-to-back to win, but in the meantime, we just make the Surf, one-shot the Ninetales, and take the win. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty terrible lead, Morpeko into Shadow Bug-Bite Fortress. I stayed in for a little bit just to check the fast move, because if it's Volt Switch, then obviously Morpeko is going to absolutely destroy Fortress, but it was not, so I'm forced to save switch into the Cramorant. My opponent puts up the shield, changing me into the Gulping form, but I do actually want to put up the shield here. I don't want to take the Rock Tomb damage. My opponent's now going to send in Mantine. Mantine is going to take some pretty considerable damage here from Fly. My attack has been lowered, but even a -1 Fly will still hit for some pretty solid damage, and I decide to save the Cramorant and actually go for a catch onto Mimikyu. This charge deck is going to do no damage. It was double resisted anyway, so it wouldn't have really done a lot of damage. Maybe not the cleanest play I could have gone for here, but I felt like preserving the Cramorant with energy could potentially be game winning. My opponent's able to land a Water Pulse in the back is going to be Clodsire. Hold on a second, the fact that I saved the Cramorant could actually win me this game. This Shadow Sneak is going to do respectable damage onto the Clodsire, and Clodsire will not let me make Shadow Sneak number 2 as they fire off energy. Stone Edge or Sludge Bomb, either way, Mimikyu is getting knocked out, but I still have the Cramorant with energy, so Cramorant can hit the field. I overfarm perfectly, CMP tying the Clodsire, not making the same mistake as last game, and Clodsire will get KO'd. I'm expecting my opponent is going to bring back in the Fortress and just look to farm down. Fortress doesn't get the farm down before I'm able to make the Surf. This should get the shield, and then the game all comes down to a catch. My opponent needs to catch the Aura Wheel to win the game. I predict that they're going to predict an overfarm, so I'm just going to click the Aura Wheel as soon as I get it. I go for the Aura Wheel, and they catch onto Mantine. Very well played to my opponent there. A beautiful catch. Mantine gets one shot, but I'm just getting bug bitten down by the Fortress. They're bug biting down my entire team. Beautiful catch there right at the end, and that wins them the game. We pick up a slightly negative lead in the next match, Morpeko into Altaria. I would always rather be the Altaria in this matchup because even though Morpeko gets to land an Ore Wheel right off the bat, you can never Thundershock down the Altaria, so Altaria always feels like it's at a bit of an advantage. The Dragon Breaths also do add up quite a bit on Morpeko. I decide that I will put up the shield respecting the Flamethrower, and my opponent actually goes for it. Now I can threaten with Psychic Fangs. I believe my opponent will be able to outpace me before I get to the second Psychic Fangs, which is a little bit unfortunate, but all in all, Altaria is getting very, very low. My opponent actually makes a nice play. They get the catch and sneak onto Gastrodon, but they're about to learn why Gastrodon is not a safe switch. I can stay in here, throw one Thundershock, transfer the Mud Slap, and then send in Cramorant. Cramorant is just really not fearing a Body Slam whatsoever. Body Slam's going to be doing absolutely nothing, and I can just look to massively overfarm. My opponent ends up throwing on Alignment as well. I'm very okay taking this damage, and I can just farm to 100 before taking the knockout with Surf. So I'm going to do just that, but my opponent pivots out. They try and snipe with the Altaria, but I fire off the Fly. Fly will take the knockout. Altaria gets KO'd, and importantly, all the energy that was on Altaria has now been lost. But by throwing Fly, I have not changed my form. My opponent's going to bring back in the Gastrodon. Arguably, I think I could have done 3 pecks here and CMP tied with the Surf, but I just wanted Gastro out of the way. In the back, my opponent has a Shadow Tentacruel, and Tentacruel can't get the farm down. The high-rank Cramorant paying off once again. Fly is going to be no-shielded, and that just instantly ends the game. Now I can bring in Mimikyu, no-shield whatever they throw, and we are just in a completely winning position. It turns out this is an Acid Spray Tentacruel. With the Disguise breaking plus the Acid Spray debuff, my defense is now lowered by 3 stages. The Acids are deleting Mimikyu. I end up no-shielding as they go for the Scald because I still have Morpeko. One Thundershock from Morpeko, Tentacruel falls, and we get the win. We move to the next game, Morpeko into Shadow Feraligatr. This is an amazing lead. I'm just going to fire off Ore Wheel right away, and man, I'm just getting caught on today. Opponent with a beautiful catch, catching the Ore Wheel onto Clodsire where it's double resisted. But the bad news for me is I honestly don't have a great answer to Clodsire with this team. I rebank the Ore Wheel and bring in Mimikyu because at bare minimum, I know that Mimikyu can always survive 1 charge attack since the first charge attack that's no shielded is going to do only 1 damage. Now my Disguise is broken, my defense is debuffed. I know that I can't take the knockout here with Shadow Sneak, but Shadow Sneak will actually get them pretty low. So I fire off Shadow Sneak, that's going to land on the Clodsire, and to my surprise, my opponent pivots out. They bring back in the Feraligatr. They definitely could have tried to make a play for switch advantage, but I guess maybe they're ABA weak to the Morpeko if this is the play they're going for. I overfarm quite a bit, CMP tie with the Feraligatr, and I full send the Ore Wheel to guarantee the knockout, but Feraligatr will put up the shield. They are trying to get damage on the Morpeko or peel away Protect shields. I decide that I am going to invest the shield. At this point, I have a boosted Morpeko, and boosted Morpeko can do a crazy amount of things. So I just overfarm quite massively, CMP tie with the Psychic Fangs once again, I have a boosted Psychic Fangs for when Clodsire hits the field. So Clodsire hits the field, it's a CMP tie that they're never going to win. Boosted Psychic Fangs is going to pressure away a shield, and I'm just going to let the Morpeko go. Morpeko has definitely done its job here. Sludge Bomb is going to be the end of Morpeko, and now it's Cramorant versus the world. The fact that I know they have Sludge Bomb, I'm not going to be shielding. Sludge Bomb really does not do a lot of damage. Sludge Bomb lands onto Cramorant. In the back is a Azumarill, and now we see why my opponent couldn't just play for Switch. They were ABA weak to the Morpeko. They needed to save the Clodsire. Azumarill is very, very bulky. I can spam out the Flies, but honestly, I don't think all my fast move pressure plus 2 Flies is actually going to be taking the knockout. In that case, if I have to throw 3 charge attacks, I have an incredibly devious play that will guarantee that I cannot lose the game. I fire off the Fly, and then I'm clicking the Surf. This Surf guarantees that even if the Clodsire outpaces me and knocks me out with the Sludge Bomb, the recoil will KO them, and it'll end in a tie. So now it comes down to this, do they have any residual energy? They do not. They were completely energy dry and on the 6th cycle. So it turns out, who needs a tie? We're winning the game. Clodsire gets KO'd by Surf, and that's a good game. Hopping to the final match, Morpeko into Empoleon, that's a very good lead. My opponent save switches into a Shadow Venusaur, and oh my goodness, I have so much respect for this trainer. Shadow Venusaur is probably one of my favorite Go Battle League Pokemon of all time. It's not a particularly strong pick right now, but oh my goodness, into this team, it is an absolute terror. I don't really have a good answer. My best answer is bringing in Cramorant, but even Cramorant has to go down a shield because there's just simply no way that I would ever be able to survive a Frenzy Plant. So all shields are now down, but I exit with a Cramorant that does have a ton of energy. Back in comes the Empoleon, and if Empoleon doesn't see Impeti here, Cramorant is going to get back-to-back flies. If my opponent ever puts themselves in a range where they are 15% HP or below, then they're going to get knocked out by the recoil when they KO the Cramorant, and they're definitely below 15. So even though my opponent doubles up on Hydros here, they're not going to get their second move, because Cramorant gets knocked out, but I fire off the prey, they get KO'd, and it's a Charizard in the back. Charizard is a very, very cool pick. You gotta respect the triple starter team. That's incredibly cool. Unfortunately, Morpeko and Mimikyu are kind of here to reign on the starter Pokemon's party. I'm able to get the Psychic Fangs bait. Even the Thunder Shocks are adding up. Staying in forces them to go for the Blast Burn, and then they just simply don't have the energy they need to beat the Mimikyu. Because Mimikyu still has the Disguise intact. They need to Air Cutter to break the Disguise, and a Blast Burn to take the knockout, and they just don't have the energy needed. Now, don't get me wrong, Charizard's energy generation is insanely fast, but unfortunately not fast enough. Mimikyu makes the Shadow Sneak, KOs the Charizard, and that is a good game. Even if pairing these three form-changing Pokemon together doesn't make for the most competitively viable team, I did end up having some extremely fun sets. One thing that I do really like about the fact that after a lot of years to Go Battle League, they're starting to add these form-changing Pokemon is it does make you consider win conditions that previously wouldn't have been possible. Like, for example, the Cramorant game when my opponent ended up doubling up on Empoleon, but they overfarmed too much, they put themselves under 15% HP, and then they got knocked out. So it really makes you kind of think about the game in a different way because suddenly there's a lot more things you have to factor in. And I do really enjoy the fact that they're still looking to try and find ways to add complexity to the Go Battle League, even if it is just one individual Pokemon at a time, and we don't even have a lot of the form changers. I do think that periodically getting to see the form changers does end up kind of spicing up the Go Battle League a little bit, which I really do enjoy. Now, Cramorant, I think, arrives to Pokemon Go as probably the most balanced form changer they have ever made. I know during the initial Cramorant release video, I was pondering whether Surf or Dive was better on Cramorant, and I ended up trying them both. Well, after playing Cramorant for a few more days, I can now confidently state that Surf is the move you want on Cramorant and that Dive is terrible. The idea behind Dive is it gives Cramorant an option to have faster pacing to its gimmick, but in exchange, it doesn't really do any damage, and I think that that trade-off just genuinely isn't worth it for Cramorant. What really sold me on Surf was actually the Cramorant Tinkaton matchup. If you're able to land 2 Surfs, that you could actually get a Peck farm down, whereas if you throw Dive, you're forced to throw 3 Dives because it's such just a truly atrocious move, and you kind of get destroyed by Tinkaton. So after losing a few games because I didn't have the damage from Surf, I ended up TMing off Dive back to Surf, and I've just run Surf ever since. I do think that Cramorant is a very, very strong Pokemon, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is unbanned for the first regional of the 2027 season in Baltimore that we see both Mimikyu and Cramorant played. I think that Cramorant, it does take a bit of adjustment to learn what it does and how to play around it, but overall, I feel like this is a very well implemented form changer. It feels strong, but not overly so, and I think that is definitely something to be celebrated. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much, and until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.